It was a creed written into the founding documents that declared the destiny of a nation. Yes, we can. It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail toward freedom. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
It was sung
by immigrants as they struck out from the shores, pioneers who pushed westward against the unforgiving wilderness. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
It was the call of workers organized.
What follows is a special presentation from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. The episode title is Netroot Nation. It was held in New Orleans, Louisiana on the 5th of August, 2018. We'll take a look at it. We did a selection of speeches from Netroot Nation, starting with Cynthia Nixon. Cynthia Nixon is running for governor of New York. And then we go to the mayor of Birmingham, Alabama, Mayor Randall Woodfin. And lastly, we have Alexandria-Ocasio-Cortez, a candidate for the House. I'm primarily out of the Bronx, but it's her district is some in Queens, and it also goes out to Rikers Island. And she explained the constituency and knocking doors for 2 years, a very long time to be rocking doors. The idea behind Netroot Nations is basically local politics, and it's sort of like roots music. They're basically the same thing. But you have a variety of speakers that show up. They had Bill de Blasio there. He's the mayor of New York. And various others were there. I believe Maxine Waters was there. I hadn't looked at all the speakers yet. But she's been around and she has been there in the past. And each Netroots Nation, they have thousands of people that show up and give support to the grassroots. One thing that struck me here was Cynthia Nixon talking about the opponent she has, Governor Cuomo, and various things that he had opposed in the past, and now he's in favor of, such as a tuition relief, we'll call it, and health care, towards a universal health care plan. And as Mrs. Ocasio-Cortez said, the situation there is nothing new. Universal health care, or Medicare for all, was first proposed under Franklin Delano Roosevelt and by Democratic presidents primarily ever since. That occurrence under Harry S. Truman. We even had an attempt to do that under Tricky Dick Nixon. We did not have an attempt to do it under Ronald Reagan, nor the Bush clan. But under Bill Clinton, they had managed care, which was a fiasco to begin with. Managed care in itself has always been a fiasco. We have that today. But many of these issues are issues that have been championed by progressives. It was interesting the way, again, back to Ocasio-Cortez and her shaping it around the Democratic Party. Now, understanding where the Democratic Party is in terms of semantics, it is not where the Democratic Party has been since Roosevelt and Harry S. Truman and LBJ. They have deviated from that particular, and under also Jimmy Carter. Don't let me forget Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter was more in the middle than the three previous ones. But those are the people that, and the kinds of people that were in this vast tent called the Democratic Party. But what has happened is the Democratic Party became more of a corporate party And under Bill Clinton, it became a centrist party. Don't be confused. They had a guy named Fromm that had a Democratic, centrist organization. They're still around, but people are not with today with centrists. And Cortez talked about this. The input, actually, that was in one of the legal lawyering in the age of number 45. That's DJ Trump. But what Trump did was he broke much of the orthodoxy of the Republican Party and went to a nationalist formation. Not that the Republican Party was not nationalist; it was a party of low tax, less government. They're still pushing. DJ Trump has basically done the same thing. Had a tax cut to outdo Reagan, and at the same time, the excuse was, well, John F. Kennedy had a tax cut. Yes, he did. But that was in 1960s, after the war, when taxes were very, very high to pay for the war. They paid for wars in those days. It's not like these adventures they've had of late, what they have not paid for. They just put it on the national credit card. And thus the deficit goes up. The Republicans used to debate the deficit, but they're not talking about the deficit anymore. They're not talking about budget balancing or anything else. Period. So this is a new day, and this is our term. The Democratic Party is semantics. The senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders, talked about that and why he ran in the Democratic primary. Because the obstacle today of creating an independent party, the only one that's done that, well, there's been a few, but it's done it to varying degrees. The last one was Ross Perot out of Dallas, Texas. In his independent party, he had the financial wherewithal to get on the ballot in the states, period. But it is a very difficult task. Ralph Nader got on in many, many states running there as an independent. We've had a number of people running as independents, but it is very, very difficult to do. So why, as they say, reinvent the wheel, when in fact the so-called Democratic Party has changed, and due to the complexities in the legislative process today, Bernie Sanders has worked there as a Democratic socialist or as a socialist that caucuses with the Democrats. Now, what the Democrats have tried to do now is, if he decides to run for president, he has to join the Democratic Party. Period. That's an idea to just limit participation in primaries. But Ms. Ocasio-Cortez was much smarter than that she said, well, I'm a Democrat, I'm running in the primary, but I'm a Democratic socialist. Period. She's not a member of the Democratic Socialists. So there is a tendency, I guess we'll call it, not necessarily a party. When we bid farewell to the representative from Berkeley last week, to Rondello, we talked about that. He was a member of the Democratic Socialists. That particular tendency, not necessarily a party, but a group of Democrats within a group of Congress types within the Democratic Party. So be confused about that. But as one of the speakers said, back again to Ocasio-Cortez, and perhaps also Cynthia Nixon, sorry about that, but the quote was, and we've seen this from various right-wingers, that they call the Democrats as socialists anyway. Whether or not they are liberals or progressives, it really doesn't matter. So you might as well take the marker and move on with it. That is an adaptation that is in the American body politic now. Because you had a quote-unquote socialist, Bernie Sanders of Vermont, that almost won the nomination. Had not been for sleight of the hand, dirty tricks, fake news, and gutter politics, he would have been the nominee of the Democratic Party. And not only the nominee of the Democratic Party, he would have been number 45. That is a fact. So thus now we have numerous people running in the 2018 election and on various platforms. Detroit, we talked about it last week a bit, talking about it. Ms. Jones, who is chair of the city council there in Detroit, an African American, they are running for the seat of a long serving John Conyers Jr. John Conyers Jr. was a true progressive person, period. But now there's a variety of people running for that seat. Two younger people, his grandnephew there, and Coleman Young III, is also running, and someone from the village of Westland or something like that, some mayor, and the person that is supported by many of the progressives, Ocasio-Cortez, talked about her, and do we have her name here? We don't. But I want to say her name is Tabuli, but anyway, is a Palestinian American running there on a progressive platform. But now in all these races there are little things that are local. And part of the localness of that particular race is the people of the city of Detroit, which is a major municipality within that, and also I believe Flint is there, etc. And that situation is you have followers of O.J. Simpson, African American people. And it'd be interesting how that seat turns out. And those are some of the things that you run into. Not a matter of nationalist politics there in Detroit, but of historically how the seat has been served. And that was one of the things that Ocasio-Cortez did not address there, but it is something that is there. It's sort of like her seat. Her seat has become a Latino, or the district is a Latino majority district. It changed, and that is a fact of life. Maxine Waters represents a Latino district, South Central Los Angeles, that at one time was dedicated, or was the followers of O.J. Simpson, African Americans. When you talk about South Central, Compton, etc., that was what you were talking about. But demographics do change as to who is there. But we're still talking about working people or working class people, and the speakers enunciated that correctly. Randall Woodfin out of Birmingham, historic city there, talked about the little girls that were killed, the struggle for civil rights in Birmingham, and what his administration is doing by bringing people together by using a diverse coalition of many different kinds of people. That was how he was able to be elected the mayor of Birmingham. He was not supported by the traditional Democratic organization in Birmingham, Alabama. So this is one thing that stands out here. So don't be befoozled about the Democratic Party other than a Semitic umbrella. The party structure itself under Perez is rotten to the core. They have not learned anything from the 2016 election that they lost and continue to lose. Now, Barack Obama, when he was running, starting out down at the old courthouse in Springfield, Illinois, sorry about that, on a very, very cold winter day, had to build his own organization in Iowa to win the Iowa primary. The Democratic Party in Iowa, the elected officials in Iowa that were Democrats at the time, supported Hillary the Monster Clinton. And that was repeated state after state. Pennsylvania, for instance, had to build their own organization. Ohio, we could kick off a list of names. States in Las Vegas, Nevada, that caucus there was stolen by Hillary the Monster Clinton. But those kinds of things, that was 2008. Since the lesson has been learned, the history has told us that that type of shenanigans does not work out very well. It did not work out for Hillary the Monster Clinton. She lost an election by a circumference of 80,000 votes as a result of many things, voter suppression being the first item there, political malpractice being the second item, and thirdly there, the shenanigans of Bernie Sanders. If you notice, we didn't mention the Russian so-called interference. They didn't need the interference when you have the situation there. And this is one thing to remember. Talk at Netroots Nation about the swing voter. Well, a swing voter can swing in many directions depending on how the campaign is presented. And the framework for DJ Trump used nationalism, racism, and also at the same time draining the swamps, that he was going to provide jobs. Under his program, manufacturing has regained a foothold, no doubt. That is not deniable. But at the same time, it is a mixed situation that you have 1,000 jobs created and you lose 5,000 around the margin by 80 to 100. That is apparent in the July numbers that came out. When you factor in Toys R Us, over 30,000 jobs were lost. So once more, you have these economic realities there and attempts to turn back the clock by the administration of 45. That does not work. History bears up against one, and that is what you will see depending on the outcome of the 2018 election. But that will carry into 2020, 2024, and so forth and so on. The one thing to remember here, the various speakers that we're covering, Ms. Nixon, Mr. Wolfan, and Ocasio-Cortez, is that this is bigger than one person. Period. It is about a movement and a set of principles. Now, some of these people use a quote-unquote moral revival. That is something we do not recommend because it can get turned into petty moralizing. The Republicans have used that. They dropped it. With the Christian right, they would talk about morality and they would cast it into anti-legislation and court decisions on the issues of gay rights, issues of women reproductive rights, etc. But under DJ Trump, they were forced to drop that word and just say that, quote-unquote, they're pragmatic, holding their nose and voting for him because of the policies he's pursued. Giveaways to the rich. The Berkshire Hathaway organization, Warren Buffett is the head, out of Omaha, Nebraska, had one of their best quarters yet, quite literally. And they gained over 9 percentage points because of the tax cut. So the corporations have done well. But yet, the average person has gained about 1.5% out of that 1%. In many instances, less than 1%. Wages have remained flat. And that's the changing of jobs. The fast food organizations, etc., enterprises are moving towards a kiosk self-service as quickly as they possibly can. And at the same time, we have automated cars. We Uber, Lyft, etc. have a big investment in autonomous cars and self-driving cars. So the gig drivers will disappear eventually. That is only a temporary solution there. And this is where you have to start looking at it. And when you start talking about algorithms, many of those algorithms that you see now will replace the programmers. Period. So those jobs will be less. It's not that they will not exist, but the nature of that particular work will change. And those are things we need to look at now. Universal health care. Insulin costing $600. Bernie Sanders was talking about that. So at WBRN, what we're trying to present is the progressive point of view. We're not here to tell people how to vote. We just bring the candidates forward and explain their positions, such as Ms. Nixon, that's running in New York. She is our endorsed candidate. Mr. Wolfan was in Birmingham, Alabama, and Ocasio-Cortez, Ms. Cortez, Alexandria, is our choice there. In many other progressives across the nation, Sandra Fluke, out in Santa Monica, California, and the work that she's doing, progressive work there. There are many, many progressives out here that have been working for a number of years and will continue to work because it is a lifelong avocation, occupation, etc. And the passion is there. And people have to, as they say, reboot themselves. They don't want to burn out. But there is a lot of work to be done now because of 45 for the Republicans. And also you see at the same time, many Republicans are resigning because they've read the tea leaves. This does not last. Well, then when you ask yourself, why did it occur in the first place? Historians will be talking about that, this whole idea of these trade wars, and the genie has been let out of the bottle. You don't get it back, as what China has done in terms of liquefied gas. They stopped buying it 90 days ago, preparing for this eventuality. They have devalued a European yuan. So in other words, those machinations are going on. This particular regiment that is out there now, yes, you will create jobs, but you will not create 200,000 jobs every month, nor will you have 4% growth. That just will not happen on a consistent basis. And DJ Trump is now seeing that as a reality. And we are just at the tip of the iceberg. Even better managed trickle-down operations like on the G.W. Bush. G.W. ended up in a depression. And if you look at any of these characters back to Reagan, they all had recessions. And somebody said, well, a recession will come. Yes, a recession will come under the type of setup that they have. The reason that you don't have as much of it is various types of legislation that are in place, period. Like Dodd-Frank, after Senator Dodd, former Senator Dodd, and former Representative Barney Frank of Boston. So those are the kinds of things we have out here. The whole nature has changed. The whole nature of trade has changed. The nation of foreign relations is changing, moving from the Wilsonian foreign policy to a more equitable foreign policy. That's the flip side of 45, whether 45 wanted to do that or not. Period. So this is the message of Netroots Nation, and get it right, pluralize it, for 2018. We'll do the baseball scores, and we'll be on to Cynthia Nixon, Mia Randall Woodfan, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The Reds were at the Nationals in Washington. And let me just make an adjustment here. Reds 7, looks like 7-5. These numbers are highlighted here, and we'll move on to the Padres. Were at the Cubs in Wrigley Field. 5-4 was the score there. The Yankees and Red Sox. Red Sox won another game, 4-1. The White Sox and Rays in Florida, 2-1. White Sox over the Rays. The Marlins were in Philadelphia. Phillies 8-3. The Cardinals were in Pittsburgh. Cardinals 8-4. Cardinals had 14 hits, no errors, and the Pirates had 8 hits and 1 error. The Reds and Nationals, unless they played a doubleheader, I'm assuming here. 6-2 was the score there. The Angels were in Cleveland. Cleveland, put my glasses on here. Shut out the Angels, 3-0. The Rockies and the Brewers. The Brewers have moved on, as one would say. 8-4 was the score there. The Royals and Twins in Minnesota, 8-2 the score there. Atlanta and the Mets in New York. It was all Mets 8 to. They shut them out actually. And the Orioles were in Texas, 3-1 was the score there. The Giants and D-backs in Arizona. The D-backs. 8-2. I gotta put my glasses on here. The D-backs 8-3, and 9-3 actually. All right, the Tigers and Athletics in Oakland, 2-1 was the score there. Athletics finally won a game. The Astros and Dodgers, the Dodgers were shut out 14. That was a game we tuned into. Thought it would be a better game. It was 2-1 on Friday night, but anyway, 14-0. They were whipped. The Astros had 13 hits, no errors, and the Dodgers a measly 3 hits. And no errors there. And the Blue Jays were in Seattle. Blue Jays 5-1. So that is the baseball scores. We'll see you on the Monday morning quarterback without glasses on here. And also we have a numbers man presentation up. We look at job numbers, roughly 57,000. Excuse me, a little less than had been, quote-unquote, anticipated. But as Paul Krugman and his roller coaster with Stephen Colbert, they were riding a Lydia roller coaster. It matches what we have at Cranston Analytics, what we call a seesaw model. We'll have an open source report later today out here also. So we have been, as they say, busy on the old Boston Red Network. Good day and have a rest of your weekend.
And it's a pleasure to see all of you. I am Cynthia Nixon and I am running for Governor of New York State. Actually, let me be more specific. I am running in the Democratic primary for governor of New York State. And I will tell you a secret. The Democratic establishment doesn't like primaries. They think challenging incumbents hurts the party. I disagree. I think it helps the party. I think that centrist corporate Democrats hurt the party. And I think they need to be held accountable. And I think the primary is the most effective way to do that. We are witnessing an incredible moment for the progressive movement right now. People are rejecting the status quo and establishment Democrats and a party leadership that is so often whiter and wealthier and more male than the party base. And that is why thousands of progressives all over America are running for office this year. Many of us are women, many of us for the first time. Because we have realized if we want things to change, finally, we are going to have to step up and do it ourselves. And this movement that we are building around the country isn't just about the next election. It's about offering a vision of the way things could work if only we had the leadership and the political courage to make that vision a reality. Because it can't just be business as usual anymore. We have to turn the system upside down. We have to uproot the broken establishment, and we have to usher in a new generation of leadership. We have to transform the Democratic Party into a vehicle not just for corporations, not just for Wall Street, but a vehicle for all working people in this country. And I'm tired of a Democratic establishment that meddles in primaries, that puts their thumb on the scale, that picks candidates based on nothing more than their ability to fundraise from big donors. I am tired of a Democratic establishment that warns candidates not to run on single-payer health care, that tells us we have to stop talking about abolishing ICE because it doesn't poll well. This is the same Democratic establishment that once upon a time told us not to talk about civil rights, or same-sex marriage, or abortion, or a $15 minimum wage. This is the same Democratic establishment that says we can't win with candidates like Alexandria-Ocasio-Cortez because she's too far to the left. I have to say to them, please, please. Maybe you have forgotten, but I haven't forgotten, and the people in this room haven't forgotten what happened in 2016. A lack of moderation was not the problem. We tried it their way, and we lost to a racist extremist. If Democrats are going to win this year, it is not enough to just be better than Donald Trump. We can't just give people something to vote against. We have to give them something that they want to show up and vote for. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm running for governor on a platform of passing single-payer health care, of ending the school-to-prison pipeline, of providing free college tuition to New Yorkers who can't afford it. I am running to end voter suppression in New York State. and to pass universal rent control, and to protect immigrants from deportation, and to support the movement to abolish ICE once and for all. I'm running to end our addiction to fossil fuels and to usher in a Green New Deal. To protect reproductive rights and expand them. To end mass incarceration, starting with legalizing marijuana and abolishing cash bail. I am proud to be one of a small but growing number of candidates to identify as a democratic socialist. I hadn't called myself a democratic socialist before, but I realized that my values and what I'm fighting for are directly aligned with that movement. So, if being a democratic socialist means believing that health care and housing and education should be a human right, then I am a democratic socialist. If it means standing up against inequality in all its forms and taking action to equalize wealth and power in our society, then I am a democratic socialist. The establishment is terrified of that word, socialism. But if we learned one thing from the Obama years, it's that Republicans are going to call us socialists no matter what we do. Race. Pundits said that Governor Cuomo was too powerful, that he had too much money, that Albany was never going to change. But 4 months into this race, just look at what we have already won. For 7.5 years, Cuomo said he had no power to disband the IDC, the rogue Democrats who vote with the New York State Senate Republicans to block progressive legislation. Then 2 weeks into our campaign, he disbanded them. Cuomo opposed marijuana legalization. He labeled it a gateway drug. And now, after our campaign called it out as a racial justice issue and championed full legalization, lo and behold, his Department of Health did too. Why? Because our movement stood up and fought back and won. On education, for years, Cuomo declared war on New York's public school teachers and supported tying teacher evaluations to scores on student exams. 1 month into our campaign, Cuomo reversed himself and decided to support ending teacher evaluations based on test scores because our movement stood up and fought back and won. On climate, Cuomo oversaw the development of a fracked gas pipeline that would devastate a community's water and health. But the same day we released our climate justice platform, he halted the construction of that pipeline. He has reversed his position on the plastic bag tax and suddenly backed off plans to store gas in caverns by Seneca Lake because our movement stood up and fought back and won. That is the power of primaries. And that is what happens when we hold our party and its electeds accountable. These are real victories, and none of them would have been possible without the support of grassroots groups like the Working Families Party, which I have stood with and fought with for better schools for the last 17 years. But even so, these real victories only go so far, which is why we need a change, which is why I'm running. Because at the end of the day, we have a governor who just doesn't believe in progressive values and flat out doesn't support fellow Democrats. If you haven't been following New York State politics closely, that might sound like an exaggeration. It's not. Apart from encouraging a breakaway group of Democratic state senators to vote with the Republicans, giving Republicans control despite being a minority in that body, apart from allowing the Republican state senators to gerrymander their own districts, Andrew Cuomo is also running on the Independence Party ballot line. That is a line he is sharing with mostly Republican candidates, including our top 4 congressional targets in the state. By headlining the ballot line, he will single-handedly be delivering tens of thousands of votes to vulnerable Republican incumbents. Because Andrew Cuomo wants every possible vote for himself, and he doesn't care if it helps Republicans keep control of the Congress. That is why we in this progressive movement have to get involved in primaries. Primaries are where we get to stand up to these establishment corporate Democrats and decide what kind of Democratic Party we actually want. This is not a time to settle for the way things are. This is a time to fight. This year, progressives want power, not concessions. And if we want real change, we don't just need to elect more Democrats. We need to elect better Democrats. So between now and September 13th, the date of the New York Democratic primary, I am calling on you. I am calling on all of you to join this movement and do everything you can to bring real, progressive change back to New York State. Thank you so much.
You know, as I look out into this room, the future is in this room. People from all around our nation coming together, despite our differences, working towards a common cause. I am of the belief that you all are the people who are making change happen right now. And you all are also the people that will be responsible for the change we need in November. Each and every single one of us have collectively been called together by a fierce sense of urgency of now. As Dr. King would say, we all face an unrelenting attacks on our rights. We all face unrelenting attacks on our freedoms. And unfortunately, we face unrelenting attacks on who we are. But right here, right now, at Netroots, we stand at a crossroads. We stand in a region right now, the South, where political maps are bathed in a deep shade of red. A region often handpicked to pit people against each other. A place where congressional districts have been designed to create division and distrust. But it's our time to make history in a place that has done it before. I am proud to be from Birmingham, Alabama. It is a place where civil rights leader Fred Shuttlesworth, my hero, once told a doctor after being severely beaten by racists, and I quote, "The Lord knew I was born in a hard town, so he gave me a hard head." I was elected in that town, the youngest mayor in the modern history of Birmingham. In Netroots, I am proud to tell you that times have changed. Just a couple generations ago, too many people turned a blind eye as evil crept across the South. Too many people sat on the sidelines because it wasn't happening to them. It wasn't their fight, they said. So that evil grew. The hatred thrived and it consumed the city. That hatred consumed the state, and that hatred consumed the region. And on Sunday, September 15th, 1963, at 10:22 a.m., a bomb exploded, ripping through the basement of the 16th Street Baptist Church, taking the lives of 4 innocent, beautiful children. Addie Mae, Carol, Cynthia, Denise. It was a wake-up moment for my city, and it was a wake-up moment for America. Today, I must say, it must serve as a lesson learned and a reminder of the responsibilities we all have for each other. Today, Birmingham is a different place. I want you all to know part of that reason is because we campaign on the promise of putting people first. As I reflect back, we created a movement. We knocked on over 50,000 doors and made over 30,000 phone calls. Because we believe our time was now. A multi-generational, intersectional coalition committed to one very simple proposition. We deserve better. And last November, when I took the oath of office, I saw that movement on display. A multicultural coalition of friends, of supporters, of voters, volunteers, and family. There was no way I was going to take that stage alone. And we take that same sense of energy and urgency into office over these last 9 months. Since then, we've appointed the first LGBTQ liaison to the city of Birmingham and the entire state of Alabama. We have built an Office of Social Justice dedicated to ensuring that every single voice of every resident is heard. And we are investing in our communities with a fund solely dedicated to neighborhood revitalization. But Netroots, I want you all to know my favorite. We are building the Fred Shuttlesworth Opportunity Scholarship. You see, the man with the hard head will be the namesake of a program to ensure every child, every single child in the city of Birmingham who wants education beyond high school will get that chance, tuition free. Without question, since 1871, we are a city of builders and makers. The iron and the steel industry of the past has given way to a financial and medical community with a common commitment to make us a hub for the tech industry with an intense focus on women and minority-owned businesses. I am proud to say it's a new day in my city. A portion of that pride lies in the fact that we are a great people of many colors and faiths who have all come to this city to study, to research, have come to the city of Birmingham to build and to bond. Our multiculturalism is the tapestry of America, and I believe that tapestry is the blueprint of our future. Now hear me when I say this. The struggle before us is bigger than a single person and their Twitter tantrums. It is. Netroots, every single thing we do must be about principle and not about a person. That is worth repeating. Every single thing we do, Netroots, should always be about principle. That makes it way bigger than the person. You remember those 4 little girls? Well, I want to share a story with you all. There was a 5th little girl who survived. The sister of Addie Mae survived, and when I talked with her recently, she shared with me and offered a simple message. A woman who lost her sister and her friends. A woman who lost an eye and bears the scars of hate to this day. Sarah Collins Rudolph simply stated, love trumps hate. And it is a message echoed by New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, who spoke here yesterday. It is a message echoed by Mayor Chokwe Lumumba of Jackson, Mississippi. It is a message echoed by Mayor de Blasio, who will speak to you all later tonight. It's a principle we all must uphold. Listen, Netroots, bottom line, it is time for all of us to go grassroots. Bottom line, multicultural coalitions are the key to all of our victories. We must have candidates and organizers who are committed to doing the work, who are committed to sweat equity, who are committed to knocking on doors, who are committed to making phone calls, who are committed to building inspiring movements that bring people together. That is how we win. Earlier, I stated as I looked out into this room that the future is in this room. That is because the energy is right here, right now. This is a we, us, our moment. Our time is now. Principle has been lost in Washington, but it hasn't been lost upon Netroots. It hasn't been lost upon the organizers and the believers in this room. Hear me, and hear me clearly when I say this. Principle lives here tonight. We must fight for opportunity for all. If this is a real we must our moment, then we must take advantage of that. Now, all of us here at Netroots know we have great leaders. But every day, it is important that we stand for our leaders. Leaders like Elizabeth Warren, leaders like Kamala Harris, leaders like all of our Auntie Maxine Waters. And one of our up-and-coming stars, Alexandria-Cortez. I want to tell you why I believe it is time to stand up for these leaders. It is time because it's time to stand up for justice. You see, when voter rolls are purged in a partisan way against black and brown people, justice is denied. When white supremacists feel they have friends in the highest levels of government, justice is denied. And when children are ripped out of their arms of their parents and caged, justice is denied. But each and every single one of us, everyone sitting and standing in this room, should feel encouraged. Because just a little short 10 years ago, the game was changed by a man who had the audacity to hope. A man who said, yes, we can, and yes, we did. And here right now, Netroots, we can again. Because the nation depends on it. My city depends on it. We depend on you because your time is now. But I can confidently say your time is now because our time is now. Thank you.
Hello, Netroots Nation! How are you all? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. I just want to take a moment to affirm the activists and organizers who were just up here. As my sister Ayanna Pressley likes to say, the people closest to the pain should be closest to the power. So I want to thank and affirm those who are pointing, because social movements should be the North Star of our politics. They should be pointing the way, so thank you. If it looks like I'm tired, I am.
it looks like I have no makeup on, I don't. If this is the 5th time you've seen me in this dress, deal with it. My name is Alexandria-Ocasio-Cortez. I am an educator, I am an organizer, and I am a working class New Yorker. I am also the Democratic nominee for Congress in New York's 14th Congressional District. New York 14 covers the Bronx, Queens, and Rikers Island. While it seems like ages ago, we just won that primary 5 weeks ago. Sometimes I have to remind folks of that. I have spent the last 2 years of my life knocking on doors constantly and consistently, talking to people closest to that pain, talking to working class Americans, talking to the people of this nation. Folks think that New York 14, the Bronx and Queens is a clear cut. They have an idea in their mind of what New York 14 is. But New York 14 is actually, I believe, after knocking all these doors, is a cross-section of the nation. It is both densely urban, but there are also suburban and even parts that look rural in New York 14. You wouldn't believe it, but there are. Parts far away from public transit. There are some areas in New York 14 that voted for Donald Trump. There are areas of New York 14 that look like a cross-section of the nation. And after spending the last 2 years knocking doors, I think we've learned a lot of things. And one of the things that we learned, especially in our win, after being outspent 10-1, after not being endorsed by a single elected official in New York State or New York City or establishment organization, and that's fine, is a thing that we need to realize. That is fine. That's not a big deal. We can come together after these things. But it's that we're not going to beat big money with more big money. We're going to beat big money with big organizing. I think there's been a lot of debate over here. At least I've heard there's been a lot of debate. I just came in from California earlier today, and before that, I was in Michigan campaigning for Abdul El-Sayed, Fayrouz Saad, Rashida Tlaib, David Benak, Rob Davidson, all candidates who refuse to take corporate money. All candidates who believe we need to end the war on drugs. All candidates who believe tuition-free college is the future, that Medicare for all is the future, that an aggressive action on climate change is the future, because that is the future. Because that is the future. I believe that sometimes we make some mistakes, that we have this idea in our brain of what a swing voter is. But after spending this time in the Midwest, after talking to folks constantly, I think we realize that swing voters don't vote for the person who's moderate enough, the person who is most timid, the person who backs down from their starting point. That is not who the swing voter votes for. The swing voter votes for authenticity. The swing voter votes for the person they think is championing them the most. The swing voter votes for a person who thinks that puts them first. And the swing voter, as was mentioned earlier, as I've been saying on the campaign trail, is not just red to blue, it's non-voter to voter. That's our swing voter. It's no mistake, it is no secret that over the last 10 years we've lost a lot of seats in this country. We've lost a lot of state assembly seats, city councils, gubernatorialships, mayoralships. We've lost the House, the Senate, and the presidency. But that's all right, because it's always darkest before dawn. It's always darkest before dawn. Every time we knock on a door is a ray of sunlight. Every time we pick up a phone, it is contributing to that light. And right now, we need a burst between now and November. We have a lot of organizing that we need to do. But I think that, sometimes the greatest success on the other end is the fact that they have won while clinging tighter and tighter to their base while convincing us to stray from ours. We need to realize the consciousness of the Democratic Party, I believe. And I believe that it's time to come home. I think it's time for us to come home. It's time to remember that universal college education, trade school, a federal jobs guarantee, exploration of a universal basic income were not all proposed in 2016. They were proposed in 1940 by the President of the United States, by the Democratic President of the United States. These are not new ideas. We are picking up where we last left off, when we were last most powerful, when we were our last greatest. The Democratic Party, it's time to own that our party was the one of the Great Society, of the New Deal, of the Civil Rights Act. That's our party. That's who we are. And it's time for us to come home. Because when working people realize that we are fighting for them the most, they will fight for us too. That is what we have shown. So I think that when we realize, again, that it was the Democratic Party that established coast-to-coast electricity, the interstate highway system, and the women's right to choose, when we own that and accept that, then we will realize that we are fighting for the majority of this nation, and the majority of this nation will fight for us. That is how democracy works. So I think that one of the things that we realized as well, going in the Midwest, we were out there with, again, Abdul El-Sayed. We went out to Grand Rapids, conservative area of Michigan, where Betsy DeVos is from. And we announced that we would host that rally, and about 600 people RSVP'd to it. And over 1,000 people showed up in a cramped, sweaty high school in the middle of Grand Rapids. We went to Flint. Another 500 people showed up. We went to Detroit, another 1,000. We went to Ypsilanti, another 100. We had to hold another rally outside. Something is happening in this nation. Something is happening in this country. And we can embrace it. We can win on it. And we can realize that we can appeal to our highest selves, not our lowest selves. We can say that a Muslim man can be the first governor, that can be the first Muslim governor in this country, in the Midwest, and we don't have to be afraid of some other that won't vote for him, because we know that 10 years ago they voted for a man named Barack Hussein Obama. We have been here before. We have been here before. And, when we realize that, again, there is nothing radical about moral clarity in this nation, that is not us that's going off, but it is how far this country has strayed, and we're here to bring us home. That's what our voice should be here to do. So I want to thank you all. And again, I know that there's some debate here, and that's all right. We can embrace that. Discourse is not discord. Discourse is not discord. Family can argue, and that's all right, because we come out healthier on the other end. I may have some different beliefs of other Democrats. I happen to believe that an agency that has repeatedly, systematically, and violently committed human rights abuses cannot be reformed. That's what I believe. Not under this administration, especially. And it's time that we take that tool away. Time that we take that tool away. Not just ICE, but our system of mass incarceration too. It's time that we realize that that cannot be separated. those issues cannot be separated from a dignified and living wage for people to come home to and reintegrate into their society. That is not separated from the ability to extend tuition-free college to all, to reinvest in communities that have historically been redlined, because the success of our most vulnerable is the success of the nation. How we treat Flint is how we treat America. They don't want us to connect the dots. When I won, they said, stay home. They said, keep it in the Bronx, is what they said. But we know better than that. It's funny, a couple years ago, it seems like eons before 2016 sometimes. But it wasn't too long ago that the New York Times had an article that said, it's inappropriate to compare, quote, it's inappropriate to compare Manhattan to Brooklyn. What's more appropriate is to connect it to Rust Belt cities. It was the New York Times that said that. Then they provided a list. Some of the cities that they said to compare it to were Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, because the plight of working class Americans is the same everywhere. And we know that. We know that the future of this party, if we are to win again, is to rediscover our soul, is to come home and to realize that we can fight for social, economic, and racial justice for working class Americans. And to fight for that is to fight for all of us. It's time to realize that we are the party of King, of Roosevelt, of the ones who went to the moon, who electrified this nation, who accomplished the greatest successes and crown jewels of our society. We created Medicare, we created Social Security, and we created the economic and scientific basis of our greatest achievements. We can own that. We can own it. So I just want to thank you all, and to know that, again, the way that we do this is when we all go home, recommit ourselves, and there is no district too red for us to flip. Thank you very much.